You're listening to The Hikam with Shaykh Zahir Bacchus of the Lotri Foundation. In this podcast, Shaykh Zahir explains the aphorisms from Ibn Ata'illah's famous book of wisdoms, Al-Hikam Al-Ata'iyah, a classical manual of spiritual development. Visit seekershub.org for online courses, our reliable answer service, and engaging media.
وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما بفضلك وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. So we're in the Hikam of Shaykh ibn Ata'illah. This scholar from the 13th, end of the 14th century, talking about one's relationship to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and putting into perspective how to draw closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because that's if one would ask oneself, what does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala want from one? What is the aim? What does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala want from you? What Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants from you, from us, is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants us to be in the garden, in paradise. That's what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants. He wants all of us to be in the garden. That's what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants. How do we get to the garden though? Is we get to the garden through the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and we get to the garden by what we do, by our works. Our works though are tempered and is measured by our intention. Our works are measured by our intention. It's measured by our intention of why we are doing the works that we're doing. Is it for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala solely? Is it for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Does it have the levels of sincerity in it that will be accepted, that the work will be accepted by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Are we seeking the status or raising our rank? Are we seeking it with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Are we seeking it with other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? What are we seeking? What are you doing? What are we seeking? The works that we're doing, what is the end goal of the work? We know what Allah wants from us. We know what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants. Allah wants us to be successful in akhirah. That's what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants. If it is matched, if that wanting of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, of what He sends you here for, if it's matched by the servant, then that servant will be successful in the akhirah, if it is matched. Because then all of the intention, everything that you do, will have sincerity in it for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Even the things that you want in this world, the wanting of things in this world will be matched with what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants from you or what He expects from you. It'll be completely matched. And so this particular hikmah is about might or about power that one seeks in this world. That one wants, that one seeks the might, or one seeks power, or one seeks glory in this world. Because there are that one wants to have things in one's control. That one wants to be in control of things. That's what one wants, to be in control of things. being in control of things does not come from anything except with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It does not come except with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You're not even in control of your own life except if you're with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And you can clearly see where Allah wants you to go and where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has illumined your path. And where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants you to be by following His command and abstaining from His prohibition, not doing the things that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has prohibited. And so he says, إِذَا أَرَدْتَ أَنْ يَكُونَ لَكَ إِذْ لَا يُفْنَى فَلَا تَسْتَعِزَّنَّ بِإِذٍ يَفْنَى. So he says, if you want imperishable glory, if you want glory that will never yafna, that will never fade, that will perish, if you want glory, or if you want imperishable glory, never seek glory in that which perishes. Never seek glory in that which perishes. What is? In other words, what is this glory that Allah that He's talking about? Is mentioned in the Quran. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions, "Man kana yuridu al-izza falillahi izzatu jami'a." Falillahi izzatu jami'a. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says that "Man kana yuridu al-izzata," that whoever wants glory, whoever wants highness, power, whoever wants might, for Allah, it is with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. All of it is with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can choose who He wants to elevate in this world. It's Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Glory is elevation. Is elevation. Elevation to what? Elevation so that nothing that you do in this world, or you turn your eyesight away from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, thinking that others are doing for you, or that you are in charge of everything that you do. No, it's Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala who is in charge. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us in the Quran over and over again about how He's in charge. He's in charge of the way that we plan, because it's Allah's plan who comes to fruition. وَمَكَرُوا وَمَكْرُ اللَّهِ وَاللَّهُ خَيْرٌ مَاكِرِينَ. And they plan, and Allah plans, and Allah is the best of planners. Meaning Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's path, or what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants from one, is the best. And so you seek guidance of what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants of you. You seek guidance of what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants of you. That guidance of what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants of you is where glory is hidden. And you seek guidance in terms of what you want to do, istikhara, salatul istikhara. That you want the plan of Allah to match your plan, yarhamukallah. You want the plan of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to be manifested to you. How is it manifested? Istikhara. Asking of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Making proper intention. Making a proper intention. That's how it is found. That's how it is found. That the servant, if you want power, does not go away. If you want power, that does not go away. And here we're not talking about power to tell people what to do and what not to do, and so on and so forth. We're talking about what he's talking about is in terms of one's relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In terms of one's relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So if you want power that does not fade or does not go away, then do not try to get power from things that go away. Do not try to become powerful or mighty, or think that you're mighty with the things that will fade, or things that don't have any control in and of themselves. Things that don't have any control over themselves. So if you want power from things, then you're going to fall into pride. If you want power over things, or you seek power from things that will perish, then you're going to be arrogant, or you're going to fall into pride. So one's glory, one's power, comes from what? It comes from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and it comes with Allah. One's glory with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala comes from what? Exaltation, ta'zeem. It comes from exalting Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It comes with exalting Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And exalting Allah subhanahu, and it comes with loving Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because you follow the things that you love. And if your ultimate love is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then your might here will come with the love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It'll certainly come with the love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or one's ma'rif, or one's knowledge of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will come through one's love, or one's knowledge of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Or it can come through one's good character. It comes through one's good character, and all of these things. And it comes through one's modesty, one's haya with Allah, or khawf, that one's fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So all of these things all these things become necessary for what? If that for is with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You seek it because you want a place with Allah. There's no other reason to seek might or glory with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, glory, except that you seek it with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the Rafi, the one who lifts, who raises. That's Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the one who lifts, and the one who increases one's rank and cause one to go closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That causes one to go closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. One of the great shaykhs of the spiritual path, of this path of going closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Imam Shaykh Abu Hassan al-Shadhili, he says this, he says, Wallahi ma ra'aytul izza illa fi dhil. That, he says, I did not see, it did not become manifest to me. It did not become manifested to me. I did not see glory I did not see glory or experience glory, or it did not become manifested to me glory, except through what? Except through abasement. Except through humility. Abasement. That if the servant wants highness with Allah, if you want highness with Allah, if you want Allah to recognize you, what is it that you have to do? This. Your head on the ground. Sujood. Your head on the ground. If you want might with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, glory with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it doesn't come with the glory of people looking at you, seeing you, and you taking it from people. It does not come with pride or arrogance. It comes through your abasement. Glory with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala comes through abasement, through humility with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. With humility to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then what happens to the servant? The servant who has that, this is one of the best statements of that I think, that if anyone wants to seek something of this world, it will not come until you humble yourself to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Nothing will come that will last or give you benefit except through humbling yourself to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Nothing. Whatever you get from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will be temporary. The pleasure of it will be temporary. The pleasure of it will be temporary. And the pleasure of it will fool you and will deceive you into thinking that you are a servant that is preferred or preferenced by Allah. It will not come unless you humble yourself to your Lord. It will not come. And it will not come unless that humbling of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is shown through your worship of Him, through your sincere worship of Him, through your love of Him, through your seeking knowledge to practice better, through your wanting what is with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, through your good character, through your etiquette with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, through your goodness with others, through what you abase yourself with others. Abasing yourself with others. That you're humble. Not only how are you humble with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is when you're humble with servants of Allah. When you see others as being better than you. When you see others as being better than you. But if you see yourself as being better than others, if you see yourself as being better than others, this is not humbleness. It is not humbleness. This is not humbleness. And Shaykh Abu Hassan al-Shadli says that there is no izzah, that there is no Wallahi ma ra'aytu izzah illa fi dhul, that there is no izzah, there is no glory, that there is none of this except through abasement, except through humbleness. The humbleness is with Allah, and the humbleness is knowing that thinking and believing that everyone is higher than one, that everyone is closer to Allah than one. Otherwise, you get fooled and you get deceived by the shaitan. You get fooled and deceived by the shaitan, and your path going to him, seeking knowledge of him, practicing, and wanting to know, wanting to practice better, then it becomes stalled or stopped. It becomes stalled or stopped. And you see that things are in your hands. You see things that are in your hands. And so if you try, Ibn Abbad, he says, if you try to derive power from external things or external causes, the dhawahir of things, these causes will eventually fail you and lead you to a state. It will lead you to a state that is even worse than the state that you were previously in. It will lead you to something worse. Because you will see that people will let you down. That people will let you down. If you put your hopes on people and on created things, it will let you down. Because they don't have the power to fulfill what you want of them or what you want from them. They don't. Because power belongs to Allah. Al-Izzah lillah. It belongs to Allah. If you put your hope in created things, it will surely let you down. You put your hope on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He will never fail you. Never. He will never fail you. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and on Allah let the mu'mineen trust. And on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, let the mu'mineen put their trust. Let the mu'mineen put their trust. And so, this is what one wants. This is what one should want. That one wants izzah, but with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, might, but with Allah, knowing that Allah know you. Even if the creation does not know you, let Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala know you. And if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows you, then that's sufficient. That is sufficient. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in a hadith Qudsi, comes in Bukhari, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says that when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when He loves, so إِذَا أَحَبَّ اللَّهُ عَبْدًا, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves a servant, nada Jibreel, He calls Jibreel. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves a servant, He calls Jibreel. And He tells Jibreel that I love so and so. That I love so and so. And He says to Jibreel, love this person. So Jibreel loves this person because Allah loves this person. And then did Jibreel, Yunadi ila ahlus sama, then Jibreel calls out to the people of the heavens. Jibreel calls out to the people of the heavens, verily Allah loves such and such a servant, so love him. verily, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves such and such a person. So love him. And they love him, Ahlus Sama, the people of the heavens, the angels, the creations of the heaven, that live in the heaven, the angels, they love him. They love this person, him or her. Then at the end of this hadith, then it said, Prophet ﷺ said, ثُمَّ يُدَعُ لَهُ الْقَبُولُ فِي الْأَرْضِ. Then the acceptance of this person is placed in the earth. Meaning what? That the acceptance of this person is placed in the creation of this earth. So the acceptance of people, not that people it doesn't mean that every single person is going to love you and fall in love with you. No. That righteous servant is going to know you. Righteous servants. That people who are righteous will think well of you. Even if they don't know anything about you, they'll think well of you. People who are righteous. That's qabul. ثُمَّ يُدَوْ لَهُ قَبُولٌ فِي الْأَرْضِ. Then the Prophet ﷺ, his acceptance is placed in the earth. Acceptance is placed in the earth. This is the hadith. It's not a Qudsi, it's hadith of the Prophet ﷺ. Then his acceptance is placed in the earth. His acceptance is placed in the earth. And it comes from what? It comes from the love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It does not come with you doing things for others just for the sake of others. It does not come with you being nice to others just for the sake of being nice. It comes from love. And when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves you, it means what? That when you do things for others, you do it for the sake of Allah. That's what it means. That when you do things for people, you do it for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You don't do it for them to do something back to you. You don't do it for them so that they can return the favor to you. You don't do it because you're seeking them to have a good opinion of you. No, you do it so that your Lord is pleased with you. That you do it for the sake of your Lord, that your Lord is pleased. If you do things for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will then love you. And this is what happens. True acceptance on this earth will occur. True acceptance of those who are righteous. Of those who are righteous. True acceptance of them. Of people. In the Quran, in the time of the Prophet ﷺ, there was the hypocrites in Medina. They wanted to, of course, turn their back on the Prophet ﷺ. And so they did a lot of things. So one of them, Abdullah ibn Ubay, one of the leaders of the disbelievers, he wanted what? He wanted to get rid of the Prophet and drive him away from Medina. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says this to him. He says, يَقُولُونَ لَإِنْ رَجَعْنَا إِلَى الْمَدِينَةِ لِيُخْرِجَنَّ الْعِزُّ مِنْهَا الذِّلُّ. They said, one of them, Abdullah ibn Ubay, he said to the people, he said, surely if we return to Medina from this battle, the mightier will soon drive them out of Medina, or the weaker will drive out the weak people. The mighty, or them who will be the conquerors, will drive out the weaker people. Meaning what? They will drive out by the Prophet ﷺ. That's what it meant. They want to drive out the Prophet ﷺ. So he saw Izzah, he saw that he had that power. That he had that power. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says this. He saw that he would have the power and the might to drive out the Prophet and the poor, the Muslims, the believers, that he would have the power to drive them out. He would have the power to drive them out. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَلِلَّهِ إِزَّةٌ وَلِرَسُولِهِ وَلِلْمُؤْمِنِينَ. وَلَكِنَ الْمُنَافِقِينَ لَا يَعْلَمُونَ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَلِلَّهِ إِزَّةٌ. However, it is Allah who has might. Who belongs might? Allah. And Allah belongs might, and His Messenger, and to the believers. And to the believers. Might belongs to Allah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can give that might to His Messenger. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can give that might, His glory, to believers. وَلَكِنَّ الْمُنَافِقِينَ لَا يَعْلَمُونَ. However, those who are hypocrites do not know. They do not know. Because they think that it is in their hands. What do they believe? That control is in their hands. Might is in their hands. That things are in their hands. If you want izzah in this world, know that everything is in the hands of Allah. That's all. Know that everything is in the hands of Allah. And it will not come through except humility and abasement. Izzah with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, glory with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will not. The lower that you get, the higher that you get. The lower you get in this world, the higher you get with Allah. The lower you become in this world. That's why the Prophet ﷺ, when he was given a choice to be a king in this world with wealth or to be poor, you're given a choice. You can be a prophet who is a king and wealthy, or you can be a prophet who is poor. And the Prophet ﷺ chose poverty. Well, the Prophet ﷺ chose poverty. Because in it, he demonstrated to us, in it, poverty, lowering yourself, lowering your rank, lowering it yourself, lowering your heart, is where grandeur lies. Grandeur lies, might lies, lies with one's abasement and lowering yourself in this world. That's where it lies. And so one always has, and how does one do this? One does it by worshipping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for the sake of worshipping Him, for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's what one does. One worships Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for the sake of worshipping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's how one gets close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and attains the love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Don't do it for anything else or anyone else. And it's Allah who will grant you glory in the end. وَلِلَّهِ إِزَّةٌ. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one who belongs all might. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala help us, guide us, forgive us, have mercy upon us. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect us and protect our families, our elders, give them good health and long life. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, our parents, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala preserve and protect them. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, those who have passed away, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant them His mercy, His maghfirah, and His shade on that day when there's no shade except His. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala preserve us on the deen, on the right path. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala increase us in closeness to Him. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect us and our children, give them good health and long life. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant them success in this world and the next world. Those who are faced with difficulties, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala remove their difficulties. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give them a way out of their difficulties, facilitate them their difficulties with ease. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make our homes for amongst the homes of the believers and make our last words our very best words. Subhanaka wa bihamdik, ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta, astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk, wa sallallahu ala sayyidina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam.
Thank you for listening to The Hikam with Shaykh Zahir Bacchus. Help Seekers Hub spread the light of guidance to millions around the world by supporting us through monthly donations by going to seekershub.org/donate. Your donations are tax deductible in the US and Canada.